I felt like I was sinking into an invisible pit, my body heavy and numb, as if every ounce of strength had been drained from me, leaving me paralyzed on the cold, unforgiving floor beneath me. Every muscle was heavy, every limb foreign, as if they no longer belonged to me. My mind, though, was still painfully awake, trapped inside a body that refused to respond. I lay there in a haze of confusion and terror, my vision blurred and swimming, yet just clear enough to make out the shape of my son Logan, lying beside me. He wasn't moving either, his small body looked so still, too still, and that sent a surge of raw panic through my frozen chest. I strained to see if his chest was rising, desperate to spot any sign of life. After what felt like an eternity, I saw it. He was breathing, shallow, but breathing. Then, I heard it, a sound I'll never forget, no matter how many years pass. My husband, David, standing only a few feet away, his silhouette framed by the soft kitchen light, whispered something so chilling it pierced through the fog in my mind like an icicle to the heart. "It's done," he said in a voice devoid of any warmth, any remorse. "They'll both be gone soon. Gone. Gone." The word echoed in my head, bouncing off the walls of my skull, leaving cracks in places I never knew existed. I wasn't supposed to hear that. I wasn't supposed to be conscious enough to register those words. And yet, there I was, awake, aware, and more terrified than I had ever been in my life. As the sound of David's footsteps faded down the hallway, his steps slow, unhurried, almost satisfied, I fought every primal urge within me to sit up, to scream, to claw my way toward Logan and shake him awake. But instead, I swallowed that panic down hard, like bitter medicine, and leaned in close to my son's ear. My lips barely moved, but I managed to whisper, "Don't move yet." How I kept my voice steady in that moment, I'll never understand. Maybe it was the years I spent working long, grueling shifts as an ER nurse, where chaos and tragedy often collided. Or maybe it was something deeper, something older, the raw, instinctive drive of a mother fighting to protect her child no matter the cost. Whatever it was, it told me not to panic. It told me to stay still, to wait, because something was horribly wrong, and any sudden move might trigger something even worse. Let me take you back. Back just a few hours to the last time life still held a fragile illusion of normalcy. If you could even call what we had left normal. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm 38. A mom, and until that night, still a wife. And before I continue, if this story is resonating with you, if it stirs something deep in your gut that says I've felt that, I've doubted that, I've lived that, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories aren't easy to tell, but they matter, and sometimes hearing one voice speaking the truth can help someone else find theirs. Your support helps keep these conversations alive, reaching the people who might need them most, right when they need them. If anyone had asked me even a year ago, I would have described our life as ordinary in the kind of way most people secretly crave. Predictable, quiet, nestled safely inside the familiar rhythms of a suburban neighborhood just outside Savannah. The kind of place where neighbors still waved from across trimmed lawns, where the mailman knew the name of your golden retriever, and the hum of sprinklers was the loudest sound after dark. Our house wasn't grand, but it was warm, filled with family photos in mismatched frames, and the scent of cinnamon candles that I lit more out of habit than mood. I thought it was safe. I told myself it was safe. But the truth, the unbearable truth, was that I had been lying to myself long before that night when the world I'd carefully built cracked wide open. I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm 38 years old, a mother, and until recently, until the moment the floor seemed to swallow me whole, I was a wife. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of believing I knew the man who shared my bed, the father of my only child, Logan. I had walked away from my nursing career the day Logan came into this world, trading the controlled chaos of ER trauma rooms for diaper changes, lullabies, and scraped knees. Logan became my world, the center of every decision, every heartbeat, curious beyond his years, sharp-eyed and always watching, absorbing every nuance of my movements like I was some unspoken guide to life itself. He followed me everywhere, imitating how I stirred my coffee, how I tied his shoelaces, even the quiet little hum I made when folding laundry. He was my shadow, my reason for breathing on the days I forgot how. And David, David used to be the kind of man who could charm an entire room with nothing more than a sly grin and a well-timed joke. When I met him at 25, I fell hard and fast. He was tall, magnetic, the type who knew how to make you feel like the only person in the world who mattered when his gaze landed on you. He worked in finance, exuded confidence that teetered on arrogance but never quite tipped over, at least, not back then. We married within a year, swept up in that intoxicating rush of new love and shared dreams. He would bring me flowers just because, leave love notes on the bathroom mirror in bright marker, make playlists for road trips, singing along off-key as we drove with the windows down. When Logan was born, David cried harder than I did, cradling that tiny wailing bundle like he was holding the entire universe in his arms. And in those early years, I truly believed, that this was it. We would grow old together, build a life filled with laughter, memories, the simple golden moments that stitched a family together. But people change. Time erodes even the sturdiest facades, and somewhere in the past 2 years, something inside David had shifted in ways I struggled and failed to ignore. It started quietly, almost imperceptibly, like hairline cracks in glass you don't notice until the entire pane shatters. At first, it was the little things, the subtle absences from our movie nights, the hollow silence, where once there had been laughter, the way he no longer kissed me goodbye on his way to work, a ritual that had once seemed as dependable as the sunrise. I told myself it was stress. Finance was a brutal world, long hours, ruthless clients. Maybe he just needed breathing room, a pocket of solitude to recalibrate. That's what I told myself, over and over, until the stories I whispered in the dark became harder to believe. Then came the cold, hard signs I couldn't explain away so easily. The locked phone that he carried everywhere like a second skin, the hushed conversations behind closed doors, the casual way he left the house without saying where he was going, without looking back. When I pressed him, the reaction was swift, sharp, defensive, accusations of paranoia, of control, so I stopped asking. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stitched my mouth shut. For Logan's sake, I painted on smiles at dinner, filled the hollow spaces with meaningless small talk, and kept the illusion of family stitched tightly together, even as the seams frayed beneath the surface. And then, just last week, something changed again. David came home early, earlier than he had in months. And this time, he wasn't hiding behind excuses or deflection. He was relaxed. Almost cheerful. He kissed Logan on the crown of his head, something he hadn't done in longer than I cared to admit, and met my eyes with an unfamiliar softness that made my skin crawl even as my heart ached for it to be real. "I'm cooking dinner tonight," he said casually, his tone breezy, like this was something normal, something he did all the time. I blinked, startled by the simple absurdity of the statement. "Since when do you cook?" I managed, my voice caught somewhere between suspicion and hope. He shrugged offhandedly. "Just thought I'd do something nice. You've been working hard lately." It was such a small gesture on the surface, but to me, it landed like a boulder, heavy with the weight of what-ifs. It was suspicious, of course it was. But the desperate part of me, the part that still clung to the man I'd once loved, wanted so badly to believe that maybe, after everything, he was trying to come back to us. So I smiled. I told him it sounded wonderful. I wanted to believe it. God help me, I wanted to. That night, I pulled out the good plates from the back of the cabinet, the ones Logan always said made us feel like we were dining at a fancy restaurant. Logan picked music, his excitement bubbling over as he danced around the kitchen, choosing songs from my old playlists. David, meanwhile, stood at the stove, humming softly to himself as he stirred the mashed potatoes with exaggerated care, like this was second nature. But it wasn't. In all our years together, David had never cooked a meal from scratch, not one, and yet there he was, as if nothing about this was out of the ordinary. Dinner was ready at exactly 6. Logan set the table meticulously, arranging the mismatched cloth napkins he thought looked elegant. His face glowed with the kind of excitement only children could summon in the simplest moments. His dad was finally doing something just for us, something normal. The food appeared fine, at first glance. Steak, a little dry, green beans drowning in garlic. But it was the mashed potatoes that unsettled me. They looked wrong, too smooth, too shiny. There was a glossiness to them that I couldn't quite name. I took a bite. The texture was unnerving, thick, gluey, clinging to my tongue in a way that felt almost suffocating. Beneath the butter, a bitter note lurked, sharp and medicinal. I pushed the fork aside and reached for my water, forcing it down. Logan took a few bites too. I watched him carefully, saw the way he wrinkled his nose but continued eating, wanting to please his father. David sat across from us, saying little, just watching. His smile stretched too wide, too forced, like he was watching a performance only he knew the ending to. "These potatoes taste a little funny," I said, my attempt at levity trembling at the edges. David laughed, a hollow, humorless sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Guess I'm not as good a cook as I thought," he said, and without another word he stood and began clearing his plate, though he hadn't finished eating. And that's when the first wave hit. It wasn't dizziness in the way one feels after standing too quickly. No, this was something darker, deeper. It came in waves, relentless and suffocating, the room tilting violently sideways. My throat went dry, the air thick and heavy, my fingers tingled, then went numb. I blinked hard, trying to fight off the fog creeping in at the edges of my vision. Across the table, Logan had gone quiet, his small hand clutching his stomach, his eyes wide and glassy as his fork clattered to his plate. "Mom, my tummy hurts," he whispered, his voice fragile, uncertain, but tinged with something deeper fear. That moment is seared into my memory. The confusion in his eyes, the helplessness in mine. Instinct overrode everything else. I tried to reach for him, to pull him to me, but my arms were heavy, foreign, my muscles refused to obey. My vision blurred into a suffocating darkness. But my thoughts, my instincts, they remained razor sharp. And David? He didn't move toward us. He didn't panic. He stood at the sink, his back to us, scrubbing his hands meticulously, methodically, as though he were washing away not just food, but evidence, guilt, any trace of the man I once believed he was. The weight of realization slammed into me. We weren't supposed to survive this meal. Only one thought pulsed through the fog. Protect Logan. I willed my body to cooperate, to move, to save him, even as everything inside me screamed in betrayal. With what little strength I could muster, I guided him gently to the floor beside me, collapsing alongside him, pretending to succumb. I pressed his small hand beneath mine, offering the faintest squeeze, a secret signal, a desperate plea for him to play along. We lay there together, motionless, silent, clinging to the only thing we had left, each other. That's when David returned to the room, his footsteps unhurried, casual, and I heard the words that would haunt me forever. "It's done. They'll both be gone soon." There was no urgency in his voice, no hint of remorse or regret. It was the cold, clinical tone of a man ticking off the last task on a list. We weren't people to him anymore. We were obstacles to be erased. Every nerve screamed for me to leap up, to run, to fight, but I remained still. Only when I heard his footsteps fade down the hall, measured and deliberate, did I lean close to Logan and whisper, "Don't move yet." Time distorted, stretched into something unfamiliar. It could have been seconds, minutes. I only heard the pounding of my own heartbeat and Logan's shallow breaths. Finally, the sound of David's footsteps receded toward the front door. There was a pause, a heartbeat of unbearable silence. Then a click. The front door shut. He was gone. I opened my eyes just enough to see the kitchen empty. I pressed my hand to Logan's back. He flinched, but didn't move. He was awake. He had heard everything. "Bathroom," I rasped. "Go. Spit. Get it out." He blinked at me, scared, confused, but understanding, crawling toward the hallway on trembling arms. Logan was only 11, but in that moment, he was braver than anyone I'd ever known. I dragged my legs behind me like they were dead weight, sandbags tied to my ankles, each inch of movement an agonizing test of will over failing body. Logan crawled ahead of me, his small limbs trembling with every effort, but somehow he pushed forward, the bathroom door within reach like a flickering lighthouse in the storm of our nightmare. We made it to the guest bathroom, and the first thing I did was twist the faucet on, letting the water crash into the porcelain basin, the sound loud, deliberate, a barrier of white noise in case David returned. Every sound in the house now felt amplified, hostile, like the walls themselves might betray us. Bracing myself against the cold sink, I forced my body upright, gagging, choking as I rammed my fingers down my throat, desperate, frantic to purge every trace of the poison he had fed us. It burned on the way up, vile and bitter, bile mixed with something else, something that tasted like betrayal itself. Logan did the same, his face wet with tears, his small body shaking as he coughed, gagged, fought to survive. My heart splintered watching him suffer, but I knew it was the only chance we had. It worked, slowly, agonizingly, but it worked. The fog in my mind began to lift, not entirely, but enough to think, to move, to plan. My breathing came in tight gasps, but the suffocating darkness no longer tugged at the edges of my vision. I slumped down onto the cold tile floor, my back pressed against the cabinet, gripping Logan's trembling hand as though letting go would mean losing him forever. "Mom," he whispered, his voice small, cracked like delicate porcelain. "Why would he do that?" The question shattered me more than the poison ever could. I had no answer, not yet. There wasn't time for explanations, only survival. "We can't talk now," I breathed, my voice ragged. "We have to get out." I grabbed my phone, fumbling with trembling fingers, but when the screen stayed black, unresponsive, the dread pooled in my stomach like ice. The battery wasn't just low, it was dead. Nothing. I checked the wall phone, my last hope. Dead, too. Not a dial tone, not even static. It was then the full, horrifying realization hit me like a freight train. David hadn't just tried to poison us. He had planned every detail, every exit blocked, every avenue of help severed. "No time," I whispered harshly, forcing my body to obey. I grabbed the emergency flashlight from under the sink, threw my hoodie over Logan's head, cocooning him in its warmth, shielding him as best I could from the frigid night air and the terror that still swirled thick around us. Together, we crept through the laundry room, into the garage, our footsteps silent, calculated. I didn't know if David was truly gone, or lurking, watching, waiting to finish what he started. I forced the garage door open manually, the mechanism groaning and screeching like an alarm, slicing through the heavy silence of the night. My breath caught in my throat. I peeked out. The driveway was empty, the street, still and eerily quiet beneath the bleeding hues of the dusk sky. No headlights, no footsteps, just the hollow hush of evening pressing in. "Now," I breathed into Logan's ear. "Go to Mrs. Parker. Run." Logan bolted barefoot across the damp lawn, his small form lit by the dim glow of the porch lights. I followed, hobbling behind him, my legs jelly, my vision still flickering like a dying candle. By the time I staggered to the Parkers' porch, Logan was pounding his tiny fists against the door with every ounce of strength left in him. Louise Parker, tough as iron and sharp as the edge of a cleaver, opened the door, her expression shifting from confusion to alarm the instant she saw us. Our wild eyes, our disheveled forms, the sheer terror radiating from our skin. "What in God's name?" she gasped. "No time, call 911, I rasped, barely able to form the words. He poisoned us. My husband. He tried to kill us." Louise didn't hesitate. Her instincts kicked in like muscle memory. She yanked us inside, locked the door behind us, and snatched up the phone. Within minutes, the wail of sirens pierced the quiet, flooding the night with flashes of red and blue that painted the Parkers' living room walls like crimson lightning. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I exhaled. We were still alive. But the nightmare wasn't over. The paramedics descended on us like a hurricane, their voices crisp, their movements efficient, as they assessed, stabilized, and wrapped Logan in an emergency blanket. His small hands clutched mine so tightly I feared he might snap my fingers. He was shaking, silent, his wide eyes reflecting the strobing ambulance lights. My own body was still at war with itself, one moment grounded, the next spinning. But I was conscious. I was alive. So was Logan. And in that moment, it was the only thing that mattered. At the hospital, the tests began immediately. Blood work, toxicology, vitals. The nurses moved with the same urgency I once had when I wore those scrubs. But now, I was the patient, the mother, the victim. The doctor returned within the hour, clipboard in hand, face grim. It was a sedative, he said quietly. Crushed, mixed into the food, likely a benzodiazepine. The dosage was extreme. You were lucky you purged it when you did. Lucky. They kept saying that word as if any of this was luck. But this wasn't chance. It was deliberate, cold, calculated. And not just what David had done, but what I had done too. The whisper to Logan, the crawl to the bathroom, the desperate expulsion of poison, that wasn't luck. That was instinct. That was survival. When the officer arrived to take my statement, I told him everything, every horrific detail, word for word, breath by breath. When I finally dared to ask, "Did you find him?" the officer's expression tightened, his jaw a hard line of frustration. "He's not at the house. The car's gone. We've issued a statewide alert." The floor seemed to tip beneath me again. Not from drugs this time, but from the soul-deep terror that he might get away, vanish into the shadows, leaving us to forever glance over our shoulders. But 48 hours later, the call came. They had found him, at the airport, trying to board a flight to Belize with a forged passport and a second phone, the escape route meticulously mapped out. He hadn't just tried to erase us, he had planned it for weeks. Maybe longer. It wasn't until Rachel, my sister, flew in that the final, ugliest piece of the puzzle slid into place. We sat in the hospital room, Logan finally asleep beside me, his breathing soft, even, innocent in a way that almost broke me. Rachel leaned forward, her eyes shimmering with guilt and heartbreak. "I didn't want to say anything before," she whispered, hesitating as though the truth itself might choke her. "But Sarah, David's been cheating. I've known, for 2 months." I stared at her, numb, hollow. She continued, her words falling like stones into the silence. "I saw him, with a woman. Young. Maybe 25. They were at that fancy bistro in Midtown. He kissed her. I followed them. They went back to a condo. I didn't tell you because I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it was a phase, a midlife crisis. A crisis. But this was never just an affair. It was an exit strategy. And it got worse. That woman, she came from old money. Her father had died recently, leaving her a sizable fortune, but only if she married someone, childless, debt-free, clean. David had been trying to become that man, free of me, free of Logan, free to start over. The puzzle, once fragmented, now clicked into a picture so grotesque it almost defied comprehension. The poisoning, the counterfeit documents, the carefully calculated airport escape. It was never about leaving quietly, slipping away into some distant life. No, David Mitchell hadn't simply planned to abandon us. He had intended to erase us, as coldly and efficiently as deleting a line in a spreadsheet. We were obstacles to be removed, liabilities in a life he had already rebuilt without us. When the charges came, they read like the bitter punchlines to a joke I never understood until it was too late. Attempted murder, felony child endangerment, use of a controlled substance with intent to cause harm. He pleaded not guilty, of course. For a while he clung to his lies like a drowning man to driftwood. But the evidence, like a tidal wave, surged too high, too fast, smothering any hope he might have had to talk his way out. In the end, he surrendered to the weight of it all, and now he will spend the remainder of his days behind bars, serving life with no chance for parole. And me? I'm still sweeping up the shattered pieces of the life I once thought was real. But if there's one truth that has become unshakable, it's this. I'd rather live in those broken fragments, jagged and painful as they are, than dwell inside the polished illusion of a perfect lie. Every morning I wake with a strange, quiet gratitude that hums beneath my ribs, not for justice, not for revenge, but for the small, sacred things that make up a life I now understand can never be taken for granted. The sound of Logan's laughter drifting from the next room, the soft, satisfying click of the front door locking safely behind us at night. The golden streaks of sunlight warming the kitchen as I brew my coffee in a house where finally, I know we are safe.
It's been 3 months.
3 months since I collapsed on that cold kitchen floor beside my son. 3 months since David leaned over our helpless bodies and whispered words that still echo in the hollow spaces of my mind. They'll both be gone soon. Even now, saying those words aloud feels like describing a nightmare someone else lived. But it was real. every excruciating second of it. Logan and I survived. Physically, at least. The doctors confirmed the sedative dosage had been more than lethal, designed to mimic an accidental overdose. A clean tragedy, easy to explain away, easier still to forget. If we hadn't fought to expel it from our bodies in time, we wouldn't be here. That knowledge lingers behind every breath I take, a phantom shadow that never quite leaves. Logan doesn't talk much about his father. Sometimes I find him sitting at the window, staring into the dark like he's searching for answers he's too young to name. Other nights he crawls into my bed, curling into me wordlessly, seeking comfort without asking for it. I let him set the pace. His healing belongs to him. As for mine, I'm learning to give myself the same grace. For now, we're living with Rachel. She's been our lighthouse in the storm, our anchor when the world still feels like it might tilt off its axis. She carries guilt, heavy and suffocating, for not telling me about David's affair sooner, but I have never blamed her. How could I? Because the cruelest truth is this: we all see only what we're willing to see. I didn't want to believe the man I married, the father of my child, was capable of erasing us as though we were a business error to be corrected. But he was. His motive as chilling as his methods. Money, status, a fresh start scrubbed clean of us. In the end, he pleaded guilty. There was simply too much stacked against him. The poisoned food, the falsified documents, the bank transfers to secret accounts. And while I can't say I've found peace, I've found something harder, something sharper: clarity. People often ask what I've learned from all this, what wisdom I'd pass along to women, to anyone caught in the web of doubt and dread I ignored for far too long. And my answer is always the same: listen to your instincts, even when they whisper, even when they tremble under the weight of denial. We're taught to be kind, to avoid confrontation, to second-guess the feelings we can't name, but sometimes that flicker of doubt is the only thing standing between you and disaster. When your body tells you something is wrong, believe it. When the air shifts, when the silence stretches too long, when the smile on someone's face feels hollow and wrong, listen. I ignored those signs. I buried them beneath politeness, beneath fear of conflict, and it nearly cost me everything. The night David tried to kill us, my survival didn't come from strength. It wasn't training or bravery. It was stillness. It was listening. It was knowing when not to move until the moment was right. That quiet, desperate decision saved my son's life. It saved mine. Now, every day is a new chance to protect Logan in ways I once failed to. Not just from physical harm, but from silence, from doubt, from believing that love is something you have to sacrifice your voice for. Because real love, the kind that's safe, that's lasting, never makes you question your worth. It never comes dressed in poison. If you've walked with me through this story, thank you. It wasn't easy to tell, but I hope it finds the ears of someone who needs it. Someone silencing their instincts. Someone standing in the shadows of denial. Someone desperate for a sign that they are not crazy. They are not alone, and their voice matters. If you felt something in these words, I invite you to share them. Tell your story in the comments, offer a message of support, or simply press the like button. You never know who might need to see it, who might find strength in knowing they're not the only one. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and above all, trust yourself.